The night shift at Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station was usually quiet, but tonight was different. Tom Wilson sat up straight in his chair as his computer screen lit up with unusual readings. The energy signatures he was seeing didn't match anything in their database. "Hey, come look at this," he called to his supervisor, Mary Roberts. She walked over, coffee cup in hand, and nearly dropped it when she saw the readings. "Call Captain Walker now." 20 minutes later, Captain James Walker of the International Space Command rushed into the station's main control room. His gray uniform was slightly wrinkled. They had pulled him from his bed, but the urgency in Mary's voice had convinced him this couldn't wait until morning. "Show me everything," he ordered, and the main screen lit up with the sensor data. The readings showed something massive at the edge of their solar system, just past Neptune's orbit. Not just one large object, but hundreds of them, clustered together in a formation that couldn't be natural. "Sir," Tom said, "the energy readings are unlike anything we've seen before, but they're extremely weak, almost like a car running on its last drops of fuel." Captain Walker studied the data carefully. After 15 years in Space Command, he had learned to trust his instincts. Something about this felt different from their usual false alarms. "Get me the president," he said quietly, "and contact the other space agencies. Everyone needs to see this." Within hours, the news spread through governments worldwide. The Chinese Space Agency confirmed the readings. So did the Europeans, the Indians, and every other nation with deep space monitoring capability. Emergency meetings were called in every major capital. The first clear images arrived as the sun rose over the command center. They showed a fleet of ships, each one larger than anything humans had ever built for space. Their designs were clearly artificial, smooth curves, and geometric patterns that spoke of an advanced civilization. But there was something wrong. None of the ships were moving, and the energy readings continued to fade. "They're dead in space," Walker explained to the Emergency Council of World Leaders, gathered virtually from around the globe. "Whatever power source they use, it's failing. And given the size of those ships and the number of them." He paused, letting the implications sink in. "Could it be a trap?" asked the Russian representative, voicing what many were thinking. "A way to draw us out." Walker shook his head. "If they wanted to attack, they could have done it already. Those ships, even in their current state, show technology far beyond ours. No, this looks like something else. This looks like a distress situation." The debate raged for hours. Some nations wanted to ignore the fleet, to pretend they hadn't seen anything. Others argued for a military response. But as more data came in, showing the deteriorating condition of the ships, a different consensus began to emerge. "We can't just leave them out there," the Indian representative said finally. "If those ships are full of people in trouble, and we do nothing, what does that say about humanity?" The final vote was surprisingly unified. Earth would attempt contact. They would offer help. Captain Walker stood at his command station as they prepared to broadcast their message. They had decided to keep it simple, a basic greeting in multiple formats, including mathematical sequences that any advanced civilization should recognize as artificial and intelligent. "Broadcasting now," Tom announced, and the message began its journey through space. For 3 long hours they waited. Then suddenly, their screens lit up with a response. The message was complex, clearly artificial, and carried a tone of desperate relief that transcended any language barrier. "Sir," Mary said, her voice filled with wonder, I think they're asking for help." Walker looked at the massive fleet on his screen, then at the faces of his crew. In all his years of training, nothing had prepared him for this moment. Humanity's first contact with alien life wouldn't be a grand meeting of civilizations or a hostile invasion. Instead, it would be a rescue mission. "Well," he said, allowing himself a small smile, "let's show them what humanity can do." The first images of the aliens came through 3 days after initial contact. The entire control room fell silent as the video feed appeared on the main screen. The beings calling themselves the Meridians looked almost like tall, thin humans, but their skin had a slight blue tint, and their eyes were larger, adapted to a dimmer sun than Earth's. 2 million, the Meridian leader, High Commander Trell, said through the basic translation system they had established. 2 million of our people are on these ships. His voice carried a weight that needed no translation. Captain Walker gripped the edge of his console. 2 million, he whispered. It was more than they had imagined. Enough people to fill a large city, all of them stranded in space. The Meridian continued, explaining their situation. Their home system's star had begun to die far faster than predicted. They had planned their evacuation carefully, but during their last faster-than-light jump, something had gone terribly wrong. Their main reactor cores, the heart of their advanced technology, had failed catastrophically. We have been adrift for 3 months, Trell said. Our backup systems are failing. We? He paused, and for the first time, his composed appearance cracked. We are losing the ability to keep our people warm. Dr. Ann Miller, Earth's leading expert on space life support systems, stepped forward. What's your current power situation? She asked. The numbers that came back were grim. The fleet's 300 ships were running on emergency power. They had shut down everything except the most basic life support systems. The children and elderly were already suffering from the cold as they tried to conserve what little energy remained. How long? Captain Walker asked. 3 weeks, Trell replied. Perhaps 4. Then our backup systems will fail completely. The news hit Earth like a thunderbolt. Every major news network carried the story. People gathered in homes and public places, watching the images of the stranded fleet and the faces of those trapped inside. In the command center, Walker met with his technical team. Talk to me, he said. What are our options? Chief Engineer Robert Banks shook his head as he studied the Meridian technical data. Their technology, it's so advanced it might as well be magic. These quantum core reactors they use, we're centuries away from anything like that. But they're not working, Walker pointed out. Sometimes simpler is better. What do we have that could help? The team worked through the night, studying the problems. The Meridians had incredible technology, but it was all interconnected, all dependent on their failed reactor cores. They couldn't just plug in a new power source. Their entire system was built around technology that humanity barely understood. It's like trying to power a quantum computer with a potato battery, one frustrated engineer said. But they kept working. Earth's governments had already pledged full support. Resources were being mobilized on a scale never seen before. Ships were being prepared, though no one yet knew exactly what they would do when they reached the fleet. In space, the situation grew worse. The first ship lost its artificial gravity as power reserves dipped too low. 500 people now floated in the cold darkness, watching their breath form clouds in the frigid air. A devastating message came from the Meridian medical officer. We've lost our first child, she reported, her voice breaking. The cold. Her system couldn't handle it. Captain Walker called an emergency meeting. I don't care what it takes, he told his team, his voice firm. I don't care if we have to rewrite the laws of physics. We are not going to let these people die. As he spoke, more reports came in. 2 more ships had lost gravity. The temperature was dropping in a dozen others. They were running out of time. But in a small office at the command center, Dr. Miller sat up suddenly, her eyes wide. She had been studying the Meridian ship schematics, looking for anything that might help. And she had just noticed something that everyone else had missed. Get me Commander Reed, she said urgently. I think I know how we can save them. Commander Lisa Reed stared at Dr. Miller's proposal on her tablet, her eyes growing wider with each page. It was crazy. It was impossible. It was brilliant. Nuclear submarines, she said slowly. You want to use nuclear submarine reactors to power alien spaceships. Think about it, Dr. Miller said, pacing excitedly. The Meridian's technology is too advanced. We can't replicate it. But their basic needs are simple. They need heat. They need power. Nuclear reactors can provide both. The meeting room quickly filled with other engineers and scientists. On the main screen, High Commander Trell and his chief engineer, Nexer, listened to the proposal. The Meridian's expressions were hard to read, but their tone was clear enough. "You want to power our ships with fission reactors?" Nexer asked, his translator barely able to convey his disbelief. That's primitive technology. It's like trying to power a starship with steam engines." "Exactly." Commander Reed stepped forward. "That's why it might work. Your systems are too complex, too interconnected. But our primitive technology is simple, reliable, and most importantly, it works." The next few hours were intense. Earth's engineers explained how they could modify nuclear submarine reactors for space use. The Meridians argued that it was impossible, pointing out dozens of technical problems. But for each problem, the humans had an answer. "Yes, the power output is lower," one engineer admitted. "But we can link multiple reactors together. Yes, they're heavier than your quantum cores, but your ships are already designed to handle massive weights. Yes, it's not elegant, but it will keep your people alive." Captain Walker watched the debate with growing hope. He noticed something interesting. Every time the Meridian said something was impossible, his team took it as a challenge rather than a defeat. "Look," Commander Reed finally said, spreading out the technical drawings. "We can't save all your ships at once, but we can start with the ones in the worst condition. We have nuclear submarines that can be decommissioned immediately. We can begin modifications within days." High Commander Trell was silent for a long moment. Another report had just come in. 3 more ships had lost power to their heating systems. The death toll was rising. "How long?" he asked quietly. 2 weeks to modify the first reactor," Reed replied. "Maybe 10 days if we work around the clock." "Which we will." Trell looked at his engineer. Nexer seemed to be struggling with the idea, his professional pride battling with the desperate needs of his people. "It's not just the reactors," Nexer said finally. "The power systems are completely different. The radiation shielding, the heat exchange systems, the power conversion." "Then help us solve those problems," Commander Reed interrupted. "You have the advanced knowledge. We have the raw materials and the determination. Together, we can make this work." The room fell silent. Everyone knew that time was running out. Every hour they spent debating was an hour lost. Finally, High Commander Trell straightened up. "Engineer Nexer, you will work with the humans. Help them modify their reactors. Show them what they need to know about our ship systems." Nexer nodded, though he still looked uncertain. "Yes, High Commander. Though I must note, this plan, it goes against every principle of advanced engineering." Captain Walker stepped forward. "Sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the best solution. Sometimes you need to go back to basics." The work began immediately. Nuclear submarines were recalled to port. Engineering teams were assembled. The first reactor was already being removed from its submarine hull as the planning meetings continued. As Commander Reed left the meeting room, she paused to look at the pictures of the Meridian ships on her tablet. They were beautiful, sophisticated vessels, designed for journeys between the stars. And now their only hope lay in technology that the Meridians considered obsolete. "Primitive technology," she muttered to herself with a small smile. "Let's show them what primitive can do." The largest shipyard in Miami had never seen anything like this. Where cruise ships usually sat for repairs, nuclear submarines now filled every available space. Workers swarmed over them like ants, cutting through thick metal to remove their precious reactors. Similar scenes played out in shipyards across the world. Russia had committed 12 of its nuclear submarines. China offered 8. France, Britain, and India sent their own. Even nations with old, retired submarines dragged them out of storage. "It's like watching the whole world work together on a group project," Tom Wilson said as he monitored the activity from the command center. The screen in front of him showed feeds from 20 different locations. Captain Walker nodded, because that's exactly what it is. The International Space Station had become the command center for the rescue operation. Commander Reed floated in the new emergency control room, surrounded by screens showing the status of every part of the mission. Engineer Nexar worked beside her, his tall frame awkward in the human-designed spacesuit. "The first reactor is ready for launch," a voice announced over the radio. Reed checked her display. It was from the Russian team. "Copy that," she replied. "Begin loading sequence." The modified reactor looked strange now. The engineering teams had stripped away everything that wasn't absolutely necessary, then added new shielding and control systems designed for space. It wasn't pretty, but it was their best hope. Down on Earth, the first transport rocket roared to life. They had modified it to carry the heavy reactor, strengthening its frame and adding extra fuel tanks. As it lifted off, millions watched on screens around the world. "First launch successful," Mission Control reported. "Trajectory is perfect." But getting the reactor to space was just the beginning. Now came the hard part, installing it in a Meridian ship. They had chosen the worst affected ship for their first attempt, a vessel carrying 3,000 people that had almost completely lost power. Engineer Nexar directed the human space teams as they worked to connect the reactor. The size difference was startling. The human reactor looked tiny next to the massive Meridian power systems. "Power cables secured," one astronaut reported. "Beginning coolant line connection." Hours passed. The space teams worked in shifts, racing against time. Inside the Meridian ship, the temperature had dropped to nearly freezing. The passengers huddled together, watching through viewports as the human engineers worked. "Connection complete," Commander Reed announced finally. "Beginning power-up sequence." Everyone held their breath. The reactor hummed to life, its systems spinning up just as they had 1,000 times before in the ocean's depths. Power began to flow through the newly installed converters. At first, nothing happened. The Meridian ship's systems seemed to reject the power, like a body rejecting a transplanted organ. Warning lights flashed across the control panels. "The power signature is wrong," Nexar said, his fingers flying over his controls. "The frequency." Wait. He made a quick adjustment, and suddenly the ship's lights flickered. "Temperature rising in Section 1. Someone reported. "Life support systems responding." A cheer went up in the control room as more systems came online. The artificial gravity remained off. They didn't have enough power for that yet, but heat was returning to the ship. The passengers would live. "One down," Captain Walker said quietly. 299 to go. More rockets were already being prepared. Teams around the world worked frantically to modify more reactors. But they had proven something important. Their plan could work. In the cold darkness of space, the Meridian ship's windows began to glow with light again. Inside, children who had been wrapped in emergency blankets for weeks felt warmth returning to their rooms. And painted on the side of the human reactor, visible through the ship's viewport, were simple words in multiple languages. "From Earth, with hope." 2 weeks into Operation Lifeline, a problem emerged. The modified reactors were working, but not well enough. Each one could only power the basic systems of a Meridian ship, and they were running out of nuclear submarines to strip for parts. In the International Space Station's command center, Commander Reed rubbed her tired eyes. "We need something more efficient," she said. "At this rate, we won't be able to save all the ships in time." That's when Bill Thompson, a retired power plant engineer from Ohio, spoke up. He had been watching the operation on TV and had taken a train to the command center, convinced he could help. "You're thinking about it wrong," he said, pointing to the power flow diagrams. "Look at how their systems handle energy. It's like a river flowing into tiny streams." Engineer Nexar floated closer to the screen, his large eyes narrowing. "Explain." Bill pulled out a pencil and paper, something that made the Meridians exchange amused glances. "Your technology is built to handle massive amounts of power all at once. But our reactors provide steady, constant energy. What if, he sketched quickly, what if we use that difference? The room grew quiet as he explained his idea. Instead of trying to match the Meridian's power systems, they could use the difference in technology to their advantage. The steady flow from human reactors could be stored and released in bursts that matched what the alien ships expected. Like filling a dam, Bill said, then releasing the water all at once. Commander Reed's eyes widened. The capacitor arrays from the particle accelerator project, she said excitedly. We could modify them to store the reactor output. Primitive but brilliant, Nexar admitted, studying the rough sketch. It might actually work. Teams around the world jumped on the new idea. The particle accelerator in Switzerland shipped its spare capacitors. Old power station equipment was quickly modified. They installed the new system on the next ship, watching nervously as power began to flow. This time, the results were dramatic. The stored energy released in powerful bursts that the Meridian systems recognized. More systems came online than ever before. Even the artificial gravity flickered back to life. Power efficiency up by 300%. Nexar reported, his voice carrying a note of surprise. This is actually working better than our original systems. Word spread through the fleet. Ships that had been dark for months began to light up one by one. The new power system wasn't elegant, but it was sturdy and reliable. Exactly what they needed. In the command center, Captain Walker watched the power readings with satisfaction. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best, he said. Bill Thompson just smiled, still holding his pencil and paper. The Meridian engineers had stopped looking amused at his old-fashioned tools. Now they asked to keep his sketches, saying they would be displayed in their science museum as the drawings that helped save their people. More ships reported success. The combined human ingenuity, nuclear power, capacitor arrays, and basic engineering principles was working better than anyone had expected. Even the Meridian's most advanced ships could run on the modified human technology. Our people had forgotten something important, High Commander Trell said during a status meeting. In our rush to advance, we made everything so complex that when it failed completely. You humans, you build things simply, but they work. Commander Reed looked at the power flow readings on her screen. They were now ahead of schedule. At this rate, they would save all the ships with time to spare. We learned something too, she replied. Sometimes the best way forward isn't the most advanced way. Sometimes you need to take a step back to move ahead. Through the station's window, they could see another reactor being moved into position. Below it, a Meridian ship's lights began to glow brighter, its systems humming back to life. Another 3,000 people would sleep in warmth tonight, thanks to what the Meridians had called primitive technology. As Operation Lifeline entered its fourth week, something unexpected began to happen. What had started as a rescue mission was turning into the biggest cultural exchange in human history. It began with the children. A class of third graders from Brazil had sent drawings to the Meridian children on the first restored ship. The pictures showed Earth animals, rainbow-colored houses, and stick figures of humans holding hands with blue-skinned aliens. The Meridian children responded with their own artwork. Soon, the command center's walls were covered with drawings from both worlds. Captain Walker found himself smiling every time he passed them. Look at this one, Mary Roberts said, pointing to a new picture. It showed a human nuclear submarine floating in space next to a Meridian ship, with hearts drawn around them. They're not just thanking us for the rescue anymore. They're trying to understand us. The adult Meridians were changing too. Engineer Nexar, who had once dismissed human technology as primitive, now spent hours talking with Earth's engineers about their different approaches to problems. Your solutions are fascinating, he admitted during one discussion. You work with what you have, and you make it work. Our people always look for the most advanced answer, but sometimes that's not the best answer. In space, the rescue work continued. More ships were receiving power every day, their systems humming back to life with modified human reactors. But now, each power-up became a celebration of both technical success and growing friendship. The Meridians began sharing their stories. They told of their dying son, of the difficult decision to leave their homeworld, and of their long journey through space. Humans listened, recorded, and shared their own stories in return. "We thought we were alone," High Commander Trell said during a public broadcast to Earth. "We thought our advanced technology would save us. Instead, we found that what we really needed was something we had forgotten: the willingness to try simple solutions and the spirit to keep trying until they work." On Earth, the response to the rescue operation had grown beyond anything expected. Schools organized projects to learn about Meridian culture. Engineers studied the combination of human and alien technology with excitement. People everywhere offered to help. A small team of human doctors worked with Meridian medical staff to understand their biology, developing new ways to keep their people healthy in the cold ships. Earth's farmers sent suggestions for growing food in space using simple hydroponics. Musicians from both species discovered they could play together, creating strange but beautiful harmonies. "Did you see this?" Commander Reed asked one morning, showing Captain Walker her tablet. A video was playing. Meridian children on one of the restored ships, singing a human song they had learned from the radio signals Earth had been sending them. The song was "What a Wonderful World." "They're singing it better than I could," Walker said, smiling. The Meridian ships that still waited for power began receiving daily supply deliveries from Earth. Food, blankets, and emergency heaters went up with each reactor launch. Each package included letters, drawings, and small gifts from Earth's people. "We didn't expect this," one Meridian mother said through the translator. "We were dying in the dark, and strangers came to help us. But you didn't just give us power, you gave us friendship." In the command center, the team watched as another ship's lights came on. But now they weren't just watching power readings. They were watching children wave from windows, watching families celebrate together, watching two civilizations learn that their differences weren't as important as their similarities. "You know what the best part is?" Tom Wilson said, looking at the latest batch of children's drawings. "They don't see primitive or advanced anymore. They just see friends." High Commander Trell, overhearing this, nodded slowly. Perhaps that is the most advanced technology of all. The ability to reach across the stars and call strangers friends. 6 weeks after Operation Lifeline began, Captain Walker stood in the command center watching the final reactor being moved into position. This was the last ship, the 300th vessel in the Meridian fleet. "Final power systems engaging," Commander Reed reported. Her voice was tired but proud. Beside her, Engineer Nexer monitored the readings closely. The last ship had been running on barely enough power to keep its life support systems working. Its passengers had endured weeks of darkness and cold, waiting their turn as Earth's teams worked through the fleet. Now, finally, its lights began to flicker on. "Power flow stable," Nexer announced. "All systems responding. The last ship is saved." A cheer erupted in the command center. On Earth, millions watched their screens as the final dark ship lit up against the backdrop of space. The impossible had been done. 2 million lives had been saved by technology that the Meridians had once called primitive. High Commander Trell's image appeared on the main screen. "People of Earth," he said, his translator carrying the emotion in his voice. "You have done more than save our people. You have taught us something we had forgotten. That the measure of advancement is not in the complexity of your technology, but in the spirit with which you use it." The days that followed were filled with celebration and preparation. The Meridian fleet would soon continue their journey to their new home system. But things would be very different now. "We want to establish a permanent alliance with Earth," Trell announced during the final meeting. "Our scientists have already prepared data packages containing our medical knowledge, our understanding of space travel, and our advances in clean energy. But we thought your technology was too advanced for us to understand," Tom Wilson said, remembering their first discussions. Trell smiled. "We were wrong about many things. Your people took our complex problems and found simple, elegant solutions. Perhaps it's time we learned to think more like you. The Meridians shared their star maps, showing human scientists the paths through space they had discovered. They taught Earth's doctors about medicines that could cure diseases humans had fought for centuries. But most importantly, they shared their stories, their art, and their friendship. The galaxy will know of this, Trell said. They will know that when our most advanced ships failed, when we were dying in the dark of space, it was the humans, the ones we thought were primitive, who saved us. They will know that humanity's greatest technology is not in their machines, but in their hearts. Captain Walker stood at the window of the space station, watching the now bright fleet preparing for departure. Each ship still carried its human-made reactor, a permanent reminder of what could be accomplished when different civilizations work together. "Will we see you again?" he asked Trell. "Of course," the Meridian leader replied. "We have marked Earth in our charts not just as an ally, but as a home. Many of our young people are already asking to study here. They want to learn this, what did you call it? Keep it simple approach." Commander Reed laughed. "And many of our engineers want to learn about your quantum cores. Though I think we'll keep some nuclear reactors around, just in case." The departure day arrived. As the Meridian fleet prepared to leave, they transmitted one final message to Earth. It was a song, the one their children had learned. What a wonderful world. But now it was being sung by both human and Meridian voices together. In the command center, Captain Walker watched the fleet begin to move. Each ship's windows glowed with warm light, powered by the combination of human determination and Meridian science. As they accelerated away, their message continued to play. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. "You know," Bill Thompson said, still holding his pencil and paper, "I don't think anyone will ever call us primitive again." "No," Walker replied, watching the fleet become distant points of light. "But more importantly, we'll never see ourselves that way either. We did what advanced civilizations couldn't do, not because we had better technology, but because we refused to give up." The Meridian fleet disappeared into the darkness of space, but they left behind more than just their thanks. They left a legacy of friendship that would change both civilizations forever, and a story that would be told across the galaxy. The story of how humanity's simple solutions saved an advanced civilization, and in doing so, proved that the truest measure of progress is not in the power of your machines, but in the strength of your spirit.